Today's lesson 3-5 is on the Pythagorean Theorem. New vocabulary words that we're going to hit is leg, hypotenuse, and Pythagorean Theorem itself. Next slide here we'll kind of cover what those are. Pythagorean Theorem deals with a right triangle. So we have a right angle. Remember, a right angle forms a 90-degree angle. Now, Pythagorean Theorem, what you need to know about the Pythagorean Theorem is this. When you hear the term Pythagorean Theorem, this is what I want you to remember. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay, that is the equation for Pythagorean Theorem. What you need to know about the vocabulary term legs. Legs is basically the two smallest sides of a triangle. The legs also form the right angle. So here's your right angle that you have here. Here's that right angle. They are formed by the legs. So the two smallest sides in this case would be A and B. A and B are always your two smallest sides. They are known as your legs. Lastly is side C that we haven't talked about. Side C is always opposite of your right angle. So here's your right angle. Opposite is side C. Side C is called your hypotenuse. So this here is side C. It's the longest side of the triangle. So again, it's the side C is the opposite. It's opposite of that right angle, and it's the longest side of the triangle. Again, Pythagorean Theorem: a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So here's our first example here. What you're going to need to do is write an equation to find the length of the missing side of the right triangle. Then find the missing length round to the nearest tenth. So here's what you would do is first write off your equation here. We're trying to, Pythagorean Theorem finds the unknown side. In this case we're trying to find side C. So here's Pythagorean Theorem: a squared plus b squared equals c squared. The unknown is C, which is our longest side, our hypotenuse, opposite that right angle. Now, 12 and 16 are legs. It doesn't matter what you put it in for. If you put 12 in for A or 16 in for A, you need to put the other one in for B. So I'm going to go ahead and say 12 squared plus 16 squared. Go ahead and figure these out. We get 144 plus 256 equals c squared. Work down your paper there that we get 400 equals c squared. Now you're back to what we've talked about the last couple days here. Well, what gets rid of a square? Square root gets rid of a square. So we need to square root both sides. So we'll go ahead and square root both sides. When we square root both sides, we find out c equals 20, and look up here on that triangle there, we get 20 inches. So side C is 20 inches. And another thing that you can do, now that we figured out side C, some common sense things that you can think about. Well, this 20 makes sense with the other side lengths, 12 and 16. Yes, it would. Another thing that you can think about is, since we found side C, is it the longest side? Yes, 20 is greater than 16 and 12. So it does seem logical. Next example, example 2, again you're going to round, same situation here, round to the nearest tenth. In this problem, we are solving for b, which is a leg. So I have my equation: a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Here's my right angle. Opposite my right angle is side C, so I need to put in 24 squared for side C. We're figuring out b, therefore I know 8 squared is A, and plus b squared. Work down your paper, we get 64 plus b squared equals 576. Need to get b alone. So in order to get b alone, I'd subtract 64. This is solving equations. What I do to one side, I must do to the other. Subtract 64. B squared would drop down, leaving us with 512. Now again, b is still not alone here. I need to get b alone. In order to get b alone, I would do the square root both sides. When I square root both sides, I find out b equals, now again, when you put this into your calculator here, when I do the square root of 512, I get approximately like 22.627. Now remember, our instruction says round to the nearest tenth, so I'd say b equals 22.6. You look at the 2 here, it doesn't round up, therefore it stays a 6, and we would have meters. Example 3 here, they give you a scenario here where you basically have to plug in the correct information into your equation. Again, I always start off with a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So I'm going to have you go ahead and pause the video here and work through it, and then we'll check back in and see how you did. So go ahead and give her a pause. When you set your equation up here, you should have a squared plus 28 squared equals 32 or 33 squared. Again, it doesn't matter where you put 28. It didn't matter if you put 28 in for a or b. You should still be able to work it out and get the same thing. You're still solving for a leg either way you look at it. Okay, after you go from here and figure out what your squares are, the next thing that we would need to do is subtract 784 from both sides. When we subtract 784 from both sides, we get a squared alone, so we have a squared equals 305. To get rid of a square, we square root both sides. When you square root both sides, you find out a equals, and this again needs to be rounded to the nearest tenth. So we're going to go ahead and say that this is 17.5, and we need a label here because we're figuring out a side length, so 17.5 centimeters. And as you notice, a is 17.5. It's less than your hypotenuse, which is 33. And it seems logical with the numbers that we have. Next couple examples is we're actually given 3 side lengths, and we have to determine, is it a right triangle? So we're going to use the converse of the Pythagorean theorem. Now the Pythagorean theorem states that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. When we use that equation, we already know from the pictures or from the information that we are given that we are dealing with a right angle. So we need to determine if we have 3 side lengths, if it is a right triangle or not. Now remember, in order for it to be a right triangle, a squared plus b squared has to equal c squared. If they are not equal, it is not a right triangle. So right here, not equal, not a right triangle. Okay, it has to be equal. So we look at our first example. It says the measures of 3 sides of a triangle are 24 inches, 7 inches, and 25 inches. Determine whether the triangle is right or not. Here's your equation: a squared plus b squared equals c squared. If that happens, it's a right triangle. Now, plug in the values that we know. Well, we have 24, 7, and 25. The first thing that I would pull out is side C, your hypotenuse. Remember, that is your longest side. In this case, 25 would be my longest side. Square it. 24 and 7 would be considered side A and B, your legs. So go ahead and throw 24 and 7 into the equation. Now we go ahead and work down our paper. We have 576 plus 49 equals 625. I'm just figuring out my squares. Add that together. 576 plus 49 is 625 equals 625. So we would figure out that a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. So this is equal. So comma, yes, it's a right triangle. Look at next example here. 4 says the measures of 3 sides of a triangle are 11 inches, 5 inches, and 12 inches. Determine whether the triangle is a right triangle. So go ahead and pause the video. Use that equation here: a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Plug in the correct information in the right spot. Remember, first thing that I'd want to pull out is side C, your longest side. Once you pull that out, go ahead and work down your paper. We get 121 plus 25 equals 144. We get 146 equals 144. Not equal. So no, this is not a right triangle. Last example here, kind of a realistic example, is Pythagorean theorem here. How is Pythagorean theorem used in baseball? So again, we could go ahead and figure out how it would be used in baseball. We have a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Well, here's your Pythagorean theorem. Look at here. Your base path creates that right angle right here. I want to figure out the distance from second to home. Well, in a baseball diamond, this is 90 feet from base to base. So in order to figure this out, we'd say a squared plus b squared equals c squared, as we have above. Put in the values that we know, so we have 90 squared plus 90 squared. Remember here, opposite is side c, so c squared. Work down the paper, figure out your squares. We have 16,200 equals c squared. Get rid of your square. So we square root both sides and we find out c is approximately 127.3 feet. This concludes our lesson on 3-5 Pythagorean theorem.